The wedding night meant to break her. Her mother's fingers trembled as they tightened around hers, the pressure sharp enough to hurt. Outside the towering black doors of the cathedral suite, the world seemed to hold its breath. Candles flickered along the stone walls, their flames bending as if afraid of what waited inside. Her mother leaned closer, her lips brushing her ear, voice barely more than a whisper, but the words carved themselves into her heart. "Just endure the pain," she said softly. "One night. That's all. After that, everything will be fine." Those words echoed in her mind as the doors began to open. She stood frozen in a wedding dress so heavy it felt like chains, ivory silk clinging to her thin frame. The fabric was flawless, expensive beyond anything she had ever touched in her life, yet she felt small inside it, small and disposable. The girl staring back from the polished black floor barely looked alive. Her eyes were wide, shadowed by sleepless nights and fear she had swallowed for years. This wasn't a wedding. It was a sacrifice. She had grown up learning how to endure. Endure hunger. Endure cold. Endure her mother's sharp words and colder silences. Endure the whispers that followed her everywhere, about her birth, about her weakness, about how she should be grateful for anything she was given. Endurance had been her only survival skill. But tonight, endurance felt like a death sentence. The doors closed behind her with a sound that echoed like a final lock snapping shut. The vast chamber swallowed her whole. Towering columns of black stone stretched upward, carved with ancient symbols she didn't recognize. Stained glass windows glowed faintly, depicting battles between creatures with wings and fangs, kings crowned in shadows, queens kneeling in blood-red light. She took a shaky step forward. Every guest turned to look at her. They were beautiful, unnaturally so. Pale skin that seemed untouched by time. Eyes too sharp, too knowing. Smiles that never reached their eyes. She felt their gazes follow the curve of her neck, the steady beat of her pulse. Her stomach twisted as a cold realization crept in. They weren't here to celebrate her. They were here to witness her end. At the altar stood the man she had been sold to. The Vampire King. He was taller than anyone else in the room, broad-shouldered, dressed in black tailored to perfection. His presence seemed to dim the light around him as if shadows bowed in his direction. His face was striking in a way that felt dangerous. Sharp jaw, dark hair brushed back, eyes like frozen midnight. He did not smile. He did not move. He simply watched her approach. Her legs trembled with every step. The floor felt too far away, the air too thin. She could feel her mother's pride burning into her back from the front row, pride at a deal completed, a daughter exchanged like currency. When she reached the altar, the Vampire King finally spoke. "Do you come here willingly?" The question was not for the ceremony. It was for her. Her throat tightened. She felt her mother's gaze sharpen like a blade. She remembered the whisper. "Just endure the pain. Remember who you owe." "I do," she lied. The moment the word left her mouth, something changed. His fingers closed around hers, not rough, not cruel, but impossibly cold. The temperature in the room dropped. A faint ripple of unease passed through the guests, though none dared speak. His eyes flicked briefly toward her mother, and for the first time she saw something terrifying flash across his face. Not hunger. Hatred. The ceremony ended quickly after that. Vows spoken like contracts. Applause muted and restrained. Guests drifted away in pairs and whispers, vanishing into corridors like ghosts returning to their graves. She stood beside him the entire time, silent, numb, bracing for what everyone assumed would come next. By midnight she was alone. The doors to the master chamber closed behind her with a heavy finality. The room was vast, too vast. A four-poster bed draped in black silk dominated the center, candles casting long shadows across stone walls. There were no mirrors, no windows, just the sound of her own breathing. She stood there for several minutes, hands clenched in front of her, heart racing so loudly she was sure it could be heard through the walls. This was the moment. Her mother's voice echoed again. "Just endure the pain." The door opened behind her. She flinched, squeezing her eyes shut, every muscle locking in place. She waited for fangs. For pain. For darkness. But none of it came. Instead she heard glass shatter. She opened her eyes slowly. The Vampire King stood near a desk, staring at the broken crystal at his feet. In his hand was a glass that had shattered under his grip. Yet there was no blood. The cuts along his palm sealed themselves before her eyes, skin knitting together as if time itself obeyed him. Her breath caught. I know what I'm supposed to do," she whispered, her voice shaking. Her fingers moved toward the zipper of her dress, clumsy and desperate. My mother said I should be still, she said. The room filled with a sudden pressure, thick and dangerous. Stop. The word cracked through the air like thunder. She froze. His eyes were no longer cold. They were burning with something deeper, ancient, restrained fury. He crossed the room in 2 silent strides and gently caught her wrists, lowering her hands away from the dress. His touch was firm but careful, as if he were holding something fragile. Is that what she told you? He asked quietly. She nodded, tears spilling freely now. She said it was my duty, that I owed her. Something in him broke. He released her and turned away sharply, dragging a hand through his hair. When he spoke again, his voice was low, controlled, but beneath it was pain that sounded centuries old. Your mother lied to you. She shook her head weakly. She wouldn't. She did, he said firmly. He walked to a painting on the wall and pushed it aside, revealing a hidden safe. With inhuman speed, he opened it and pulled out a thick leather folder. He tossed it onto the bed. Read. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. The words blurred at first, then sharpened as she forced herself to focus. Legal language. Corporate seals. Her mother's signature. Then she saw the clause. Her knees buckled. She sold me, she whispered. She traded me. No, he said softly, stepping closer. She tried to. Her head snapped up. What do you mean? He looked at her then, not as a king, not as a monster, but as something weary and burdened. She believed she was giving me a bride, he said. But what she actually offered was proof. Proof of what? He hesitated, then spoke the words that would change her life forever. Proof that you are not human in the way she thinks. The room fell silent. And for the first time since the doors had closed, she realized something terrifying and strangely hopeful. The vampire king had never intended to harm her. The truth hidden in her blood. The silence after his words felt heavier than any scream. She stood frozen, the leather folder slipping from her fingers onto the black silk bedspread. Her heart thundered violently in her chest as his sentence replayed again and again in her mind. You are not human in the way she thinks. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Fear clawed up her spine, mixing with confusion so sharp it made her dizzy. She took an unsteady step back, the hem of her dress brushing the cold stone floor. What are you saying? She whispered. The vampire king watched her closely, as if measuring every breath she took. Whatever he saw seemed to confirm something only he understood. Slowly, deliberately, he moved away from her, not retreating but giving her space. Sit, he said gently, gesturing toward the bed. You're about to hear things that will fracture everything you believe about yourself. She shook her head at first, instinct screaming to run, but her legs betrayed her. She sank onto the edge of the mattress, hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her pulse raced, warmth flooding her skin in contrast to the cold presence filling the room. He leaned against the desk across from her, crossing his arms. In the flickering firelight, his face looked older somehow, ancient lines etched beneath the flawless surface, eyes shadowed with memories that stretched far beyond human years. Your mother came to me 12 years ago, he began. Desperate. Broke. Afraid of losing her empire. She believed she was bargaining from weakness. Her breath caught. I was a child. Yes, he said quietly. And even then you were already extraordinary. Her fingers curled into the fabric of her dress. I don't understand. You were never meant to, he replied. You were meant to survive. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. The world you know exists beside another, older, darker, ruled by laws humans no longer remember. Bloodlines matter there. Power sleeps inside flesh. And once every few centuries a child is born who carries something rare. Her heart hammered harder. What kind of something? He hesitated. For the first time since she'd met him, uncertainty crossed his face. Mercy, he said. The word stunned her. Not strength, he continued. Not hunger. Not domination. Mercy. The ability to endure suffering without becoming cruel. To heal what darkness breaks. She laughed weakly, a cracked sound. You think that's me? I can barely stand up for myself. And yet, he said softly, you never learned how to hate. Her eyes burned. He reached for the folder again and opened it, flipping through pages she hadn't noticed before. Old photographs, handwritten records, symbols matching those carved into the cathedral walls. You were born during a blood eclipse, he explained. A convergence that hasn't happened in over 400 years. Your heartbeat carries a frequency vampires can feel from across a room. It's why they stared at your neck tonight. Her stomach twisted. So, they wanted to feed on me. No, he said sharply. They wanted to claim you. To control you. To use what you carry. She stood abruptly, panic surging. Then why did you marry me? His gaze softened. Because I was the only one who could keep you alive. The words knocked the air from her lungs. My kind has kings, he continued. But power without restraint breeds monsters. For centuries we searched for a queen who could temper us, not through fear but through conscience. Someone who could stand beside a king and remind him what humanity feels like. Her knees weakened again. You're saying, me? Yes. Tears spilled freely now, sliding down her cheeks. I didn't choose this. No, he agreed. But neither did I. She hugged herself, shaking. Memories rushed back. Her mother's cold eyes, the endless endurance, the way suffering had been her normal. So my mother, she knew? She suspected, he said grimly. Enough to sell you. Enough to believe pain would break whatever you carried. His jaw tightened. She underestimated you. Something inside her shifted. For the first time in her life, someone wasn't telling her to endure. They were telling her she mattered. She looked up at him slowly. If I'm so important, why do I feel so weak? He stepped closer, kneeling in front of her so they were eye level. The movement was startling, this powerful, feared king lowering himself before her. Because true strength doesn't roar, he said quietly. It survives. His eyes searched her face. Tonight, I didn't bring you here to claim your body. I brought you here to give you a choice. A choice? She echoed. You may leave, he said. I will erase your mother's debt and place you somewhere no vampire will ever find you. Her chest tightened. And if I stay? Then you learn who you are, he replied. At your pace. With protection. With respect. Respect. The word echoed louder than any promise she'd ever been given. She hesitated, fear and hope battling violently inside her. Then she asked the question trembling on her lips. If I stay, will you hurt me? His answer was immediate. Never. The certainty in his voice shattered something deep within her. She swallowed hard. Then, I'll stay. A slow breath left him as if he'd been holding it for years. Then everything changes, he said. Outside the chamber, ancient forces stirred. And somewhere deep within her blood, something long asleep began to awaken. When the palace turned against her. She did not sleep that night. Even after the fire burned low and silence settled across the chamber, her eyes remained open, staring into the dark canopy above the bed. The vampire king had left her alone after their conversation, not as abandonment but as a promise kept. He had ordered servants to prepare a separate room for himself, refusing to cross the threshold again. No one had ever given her space before. The realization was as unsettling as it was comforting. Dawn never came. Outside the windows, the sky remained perpetually bruised with night. She learned quickly that Blackwood Tower did not obey the same rhythms as the human world. Time moved differently here, measured in heartbeats and shadows rather than sun and clock hands. A soft knock sounded at the door. She flinched instinctively. May I enter? A woman's voice asked. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. The door opened to reveal a woman dressed in dark gray, her silver hair braided tightly down her back. Her eyes were sharp but not cruel, ancient but alert. I am Marith, the woman said, inclining her head. Keeper of the inner court. Her gaze swept over her with clinical precision, not predatory but assessing. You survived the wedding night, Marith continued. That alone has unsettled the palace. Her stomach tightened. Unsettled how? Maritha's lips thinned. There are those who believed you would not last an hour. Others believed you would break. The fact that neither happened makes you dangerous. Dangerous. The word followed her through the halls as she was escorted from the chamber. Every corridor seemed alive, whispering with unseen movement. Eyes followed her from the shadows, some curious, some hostile. She felt exposed, painfully aware of how human she looked among creatures who moved like living legends. They reached a grand hall carved entirely from black stone. At its center stood the vampire king, arms crossed, posture rigid. The moment he saw her, something in his expression shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Relief. That alone sent warmth spreading through her chest. You should not be here, a voice snapped before she could speak. A tall vampire stepped forward, his pale face twisted with disdain. His eyes glowed faintly red as they locked onto her. She is untrained. Untested. Human? He sneered. Her presence weakens the court. She is under my protection, the king replied calmly. Protection is not enough, another voice joined. A woman this time, draped in crimson silk. The prophecy speaks of ruin as often as salvation. The word prophecy made her breath hitch. The king's jaw tightened. The prophecy speaks of balance. And balance has always required blood, the man snarled. Before she could stop herself, she stepped forward. I'm not here to take anything from you, she said quietly. The hall fell silent. Every gaze snapped to her. Her hands trembled, but she lifted her chin. I didn't ask to be brought here. I didn't ask to matter. But if I frighten you just by standing, then maybe the problem isn't me. A ripple of shock passed through the court. The crimson-clad woman laughed softly. Bold words for a fragile thing. The king moved instantly. In one blink, he stood between them, power radiating outward like a storm held barely in check. Do not mistake her restraint for weakness, he said coldly. Or you will answer to me. Silence slammed down again. Later, in a private chamber high above the city, she finally allowed herself to exhale. Her legs gave out and she sank onto a bench near a tall arched window. I shouldn't have spoken, she whispered. I made it worse. He approached slowly, careful not to startle her. No, he said. You did exactly what was needed. She looked up at him, eyes shining. They hate me. They fear what they cannot control, he replied. And you are something new. She wrapped her arms around herself. I don't feel new. I feel small. He knelt before her again just as he had the night before. Small things change the world, he said quietly. Rivers carve mountains. Mercy ends wars. Her breath caught. You don't look at me like they do, she whispered. That is because I see you, he said. For a moment, the space between them felt charged, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with touch. His hand hovered near hers, not claiming, not demanding. She closed her eyes. And something inside her answered. A warmth spread through her chest, pulsing outward in soft waves. The shadows in the room recoiled. The air shimmered. His eyes widened. You're doing it, he murmured. Doing what? She asked, panicked. Calming the darkness, he said in awe. Footsteps thundered outside the chamber doors. The inner court burst in, faces tight with alarm. The wards are shifting, Marith announced. The tower is responding to her presence. The king stood, power coiling around him protectively. Then it has begun, he said. She looked between them, heart racing. What's begun? He turned to her, expression grave yet steady. You're awakening, he said. And somewhere far below, ancient enemies felt it too. The night she chose to stand. The tower did not sleep. Stone groaned deep within its bones, a low, ancient sound that vibrated through the corridors like a warning. Candles guttered as unseen currents passed through the halls. Servants fled from shadowed corners. Somewhere far below, iron gates slammed shut. She stood in the center of the chamber, breath shallow, palms warm and tingling as if her blood itself had begun to hum. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to cause this. The vampire king turned to her, his expression fierce, not with anger but with urgency. You didn't cause it, he said. You revealed it. Outside the chamber doors, voices rose, angry, frightened, demanding. The inner court was no longer debating. They were reacting. Marith stepped forward, her usually controlled voice edged with tension. The old families are calling this a breach of ancient law. They say the human must be removed before dawn. Removed. The word sliced through her. She instinctively took a step back, fear flooding her limbs. I'll go, she said quickly. If leaving fixes this, I'll go. The vampire king turned sharply toward her. No. His single word carried the weight of command, but also something else. Fear. They will hunt you, he continued, lowering his voice. You cannot outrun what you are. She shook her head, tears spilling over. Then I'm the danger. I've been the danger my whole life. People suffer because of me. He crossed the space between them and took her hands in his, grounding her trembling body. His touch was cool, steady. Look at me, he said. She did. I have ruled through fear for centuries, he continued. I have spilled blood to maintain order. And yet my kingdom has never known peace. His thumb brushed gently across her knuckles. You walk into my world and the darkness recoils. That is not destruction. Her chest tightened painfully. I don't want anyone hurt because of me. Then stand, he said softly. Do not run. Do not endure. Choose. The doors burst open. A faction of the inner court stormed inside, eyes blazing. The tall vampire from before stepped forward, fangs barely concealed. This has gone far enough, he snarled. She is destabilizing the realm. The prophecy was never meant to be fulfilled this way. The prophecy does not belong to you, the king replied coldly. She is untrained, the vampire continued. Her presence weakens us. Let us end this cleanly. The room seemed to freeze. She felt it then, true danger. Not hunger. Not fear. Hatred sharpened into intent. Her heart pounded violently, but something deeper rose with it. Not rage. Resolve. She stepped forward again. I won't fight you, she said quietly. I won't harm you. But I won't disappear either. A ripple of laughter moved through the rebels. You think words can stop us? No, she replied. But I think truth can. She closed her eyes. For the first time in her life, she stopped bracing for pain. She stopped enduring. She let herself feel everything. The loneliness of her childhood, the cruelty of her mother's betrayal, the terror of the wedding night, the unexpected gentleness of a king who refused to break her. She let her compassion expand instead of shrink. The warmth inside her surged. Light, not blinding, not violent, spread outward like a slow sunrise. Shadows thinned. The oppressive weight in the room lifted. Vampires staggered back, clutching their chests, not in pain but in shock. Memories surfaced in their eyes. Human memories. Loss. Regret. The tall vampire fell to his knees, gasping. Make it stop, he whispered, not in agony but in grief. She opened her eyes, horrified. I didn't mean. You showed us ourselves, Marith breathed. The vampire king stared at her as if seeing the future unfold before him. This is why they fear you, he said softly. You remind monsters what they once were. The rebels retreated, shaken, their rebellion collapsing not through force, but through revelation. When the doors finally closed again, the room was silent. She swayed. Strong arms caught her before she fell. The vampire king held her close, one arm firm around her back, the other shielding her as if the world itself might strike again. You stood, he murmured near her ear. You chose. She rested her forehead against his chest, exhausted tears soaking into his coat. I was so afraid. I know, he said. So was I. For the first time he did not pull away. Outside the tower, the city slept unaware that its future had shifted. And deep within the vampire realm, an ancient crown waited, for a queen who ruled not with blood but with mercy. The queen who never endured again. The city never knew how close it came to destruction. By dawn, the rebellion had collapsed into silence. The inner court stood fractured, not by violence but by truth. Vampires who had ruled through fear for centuries now avoided her gaze, ashamed of what they had remembered. The tower felt different, lighter. As if the stones themselves had exhaled after holding their breath for generations. She woke in a sunless room bathed in silver light, wrapped in soft linen instead of silk chains. For a moment, panic surged, until she realized she was not alone. The vampire king sat nearby, still and watchful as if he had never left. You didn't run, he said quietly when she stirred. She pushed herself upright slowly, her body tired but her spirit clearer than it had ever been. I almost did. But you didn't, he replied. You chose yourself. The words felt strange, chose yourself. No one had ever told her that was allowed. Marith entered shortly after, her expression solemn. There is unfinished business, she said. Your mother has arrived. The room went cold. Her heart clenched, old wounds reopening instantly. Why is she here? Because the court has summoned her, Marith answered. And because debts, human or otherwise, must be answered. They found Genevieve Sterling standing in the grand hall, perfectly dressed, chin lifted, eyes sharp with entitlement. She looked exactly as she always had, untouched by guilt, convinced the world owed her survival. When she saw her daughter, she smiled tightly. There you are. I knew you'd manage. You always do. The words struck harder than any blow. You sold me, she said quietly. Genevieve scoffed. I protected you. You should be grateful. Do you have any idea what I sacrificed to keep us afloat? The vampire king stepped forward, his presence freezing the room. You sacrificed your child, he said calmly. And you miscalculated. Genevieve's smile faltered for the first time. This was a business arrangement. No, her daughter replied, voice steady now. It was cruelty. She felt the warmth rise again, not overwhelming, not explosive. Controlled. Focused. I endured my whole life because you taught me that pain was the price of love, she continued. But you were wrong. Genevieve took a step back, suddenly uneasy. You owe me. I owe myself, she said. The court passed judgment swiftly. The debt was erased, but not in Genevieve's favor. Her assets dissolved. Her influence vanished. She was stripped not of blood but of power, the only language she had ever spoken. As guards escorted her away, Genevieve turned back once, eyes wide with disbelief. "You'll regret this," she hissed. Her daughter met her gaze calmly. "No," she said. "I'm done enduring." When the hall emptied, silence returned, but this time it felt earned. Later, beneath the vaulted ceiling of the throne chamber, the vampire king knelt. Gasps echoed through the court. "I ruled through fear because I believed mercy made us weak," he said. "I was wrong." He looked up at her, eyes unguarded. "You are not my bride by contract. You are my equal by choice." She trembled, not with fear but with awe. "I don't want a crown," she whispered. "I know," he replied gently. "That is why you deserve it." She placed her hand over his, grounding them both. "Then we rule differently." A slow smile touched his lips, the first genuine one she had ever seen. Together. The court bowed. Not because they were commanded, but because they finally understood. She had entered that tower as a girl taught to endure pain. She left the throne room as a queen who ended it,